And as I began to see God in this season of life, there was a song that kept going through my head, and one of the songs that we just sang, and one of the lyrics in there is, Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. And I remember one day, God, what breaks your heart? And as I prayed that, earnestly asking, Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. It was as if God was waiting for me to pray that prayer, because the response was pretty immediate. I'm glad you asked. What breaks my heart is an entire group of people who are estranged from me because of judgmental people and pastors like yourself. Ow, I think. And so God went on to say, he goes, now I could have just asked you to be an ambassador to these people and tell them that I love them, but you did pray, Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. And so I am breaking your heart with what breaks mine, our sons. I knew you were going to pray this prayer. Do you remember our conversation? Remembering that conversation 18 years earlier did not keep me from entering a season of emotional turmoil. There's a book, The Land Between by Jeff Mannion. I've never met him, but I'm pretty sure that he wrote this to describe the season of life that I was in. He talks about the Old Testament story of the Exodus, where the people of Israel are coming out of Egypt, and God tells them, I'm going to take you to this promised land. It's really good. And the people just wanted to get through the desert and get over there. And God says, no, you're missing the point here. This land between, this desert, you need to camp there for a while. There's some lessons here that you need to learn that you can't learn once you get there. You have to be shaped and molded. I'm transforming the topography of who you are so that you'll be ready for this blessing that's coming. Most failed and died in the desert. Most looked at the sand and the heat, and they missed the manna, and they missed the pillar of fire by night by which God led them. And so I cried out, Lord, I really don't want to die in the desert. And so for me, I called this season an emotional half-pipe, that structure they use for the skateboarders that go back and forth. And on this side of the platform was depression. And I just camped there for a while. And as I would come out of the depression, I would come up to the other side, which was just anger at God. And I was just angry at God. And I would go back and forth. And in the midst of it all, it was as if God was silent. Having years of a close walk with the Lord, these defining moments where God speaks into your life, and all of a sudden they just evaporate. It's as if somebody just cut the communication line. I had this visual of my riding my bike for the first time without training wheels. And the Lord was holding the back seat of my bike, and we were doing great. And somewhere along the line, I looked back over my shoulder, and he's not there. And so panic sets in, and crash and burn, and I look back to God as if to say, what are you doing letting go of me at a time like this? I need you. And from a distance, he looked at me and he said, I've never left you. You're right here. I'm making sure that nothing's going to harm you. Yes, I see you scraped your knee. You'll get over that. Get up. Get back on your bike, because you need to enter this season of faith testing, of faith building alone. But I'm right here. I've got you. So as a result, my priorities shifted. My number one issue was no longer my son's sexuality. My number one issue was reconnecting with God, establishing that communication link. Kind of important as a father, really important as a Christ follower, rather essential as a pastor. Hello. Military training teaches you to identify your current position, determine your destination, and then chart a path to get there. And so my current position was Psalm 51:17, which says, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. The Lord will not despise. So my destination is Psalm 51:10 through 12, which says, create in me a clean heart, God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. Please don't cast me away from your presence. Please don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. God is in the restoration business. God God likes to do that. And so my path was Psalm 142, verse 3, which says, when my spirit was overwhelmed within me, you knew my path. God knows the path that I need to take to get through the desert. Psalm 143, verse 8 says, cause me to hear your loving kindness in the morning. I trust you, Lord. Cause me to know the way in which I should walk. I lift up my soul to you. So I began a new path, a new resolve. This is no longer a theological debate for me. This is no longer information for an ethics paper. This is, I broke your heart for what breaks mine. I love my son unconditionally. Abandoning my son is not an option. Walking away from a creator God whose desire is to be reconciled with all of his creation is not an option. And so I'm stuck in this unresolvedness, this unresolved cadence, this bump-a-da-dump-bump. Bump, bump. There's something in our soul that just cries out for resolve. We just don't like living in that state of unresolvedness, that place between the notes. We want the music to change at the end of the movie because we know happily ever after is coming. God does not promise us resolution to all of our issues this side of heaven. That would be nice. Sometimes he asks us to live in that tension, that space between the notes. And so my theology has intersected with my reality. And so, Lord, where do I start? How do I find this path of restoration? Where's the yellow brick road? I don't know where to begin. And so for me, the starting point was Job 42:10, which says that the Lord restored to Job when he prayed for his friends. When Job got the focus off of himself and all of his stuff, and he prayed for somebody else. There's a sweet spot there that God likes to travel in. And so I resolved to get the focus off myself, and I realized that if God knows my path through this desert, then he's probably already set up an appointment for me to meet somebody that I can pour into. And so God answered that prayer through a man named Don. I met Don at a support group, if you will, at another church where it was safe to talk about life at that intersection of faith and sexuality. And it was through his wrestling with his faith and his sexuality that he prayed for my son and myself. I've been pastoring for almost 20 years, and this is the first time that I felt someone pray fervent prayers for me and my family. And I didn't care what his sexuality was. I didn't care how he voted on Prop 8. I just wanted him to keep praying for my son. And so one day I'm talking to Don about this season I'm in of this dark night of the soul, and getting up late at night and early in the morning and going into the other room and praying and crying and reading my Bible and journaling and writing. And the whole time my little dog Sherman is right there with me. And he's going, I don't know what's going on with you, dude, but I can tell something's unsettled, and I just want you to know I'm right here. And as I'm sharing this story with Don, I can see his countenance just... I said, Don, do you like dogs? Oh, I love dogs. I used to have a dog as a kid. I said, Don, do you have a dog now? No. Like, well, Don, you're an adult. Go get a dog. There's hundreds of them at the pound waiting for, just go get a dog. And he went on to tell me this story. He said, well, I've just spent every penny I have on this fixer-upper home, and on the one side of the house, there's no fence between my neighbor and my house. And before I get a dog, I need to get a fence. And before I can get a fence, I just don't have the funds to do that. A few weeks later, I show up at Don's house with a truckload of fence material and 2x4s and poles and cement and tools and things. And so for the next couple of months, we built a fence. And we would spend about an hour or so working on the fence, and then we'd spend about 2 or 3 hours talking, praying, crying out to God. God, where are you? In the midst of one of those conversations, Don says something really funny. I don't remember what it was, but I remember just belly laughing, and it caught me so off guard. I said, Don, I haven't laughed like that in over a year. That just kind of came from within and came out, and it just felt so good. And I realized that God was using Don to restore my joy. I was on the path of restoration. God has broken my heart for what breaks his.